Okay, go ahead and begin.
All right. The educational foundations of morality. Research question and related topics. How can educational programs cultivate both moral courage and intelligent disobedience in individuals? Ethical education, role modeling, critical thinking skills, and intelligent disobedience. Why is moral courage and intellectual disobedience important? Well, moral courage is the willingness to stand up for what is right, moral, and ethical even in the face of adversaries. In education, it serves as the gateway to critical thinking, decision making, and social justice. Intellectual disobedience is the act of challenging established norms or questioning the status quo. It is important in education as it fosters innovation, creativity, and learning. It is synchronous with moral courage. Ethical education. Ethical education is the process of teaching and learning about moral and ethical principles. It is often taught subconsciously as opposed to specifically being taught in isolation. Ethical education can be taught via reinforcing positive behaviors like simple gestures such as apologies with which ethically represent compassion and care. Character education is also ethical education. It is crucial to remember that students are more than statistics. That's another way of teaching ethical education. Role modeling. Role modeling serves a crucial and timeless role in educationally promoting morality. Positive role models guide the thinking processes of the people they influence. For example, oops, according to the Natural Literacy Trust, source in slide 8, more than half of children and young people who had a role model agree that seeing their role model read would make them think it's okay to read, which goes to show the impact that role models do have. Critical thinking skills. Critical thinking skills, another very common aspect of general education, allow the ability to analyze ethical dilemmas, leading to the critical choices between right and wrong. Critical thinking skills allow the evaluation of ethical arguments, a crucial part in assessing fallacies within moral and ethical reasoning. Critical thinking skills also aid in recognizing ethical complexity and generating ethical solutions, often propelled furthermore by moral courage. Ethical programs can therefore utilize critical thinking to cultivate moral courage and intellectual disobedience in people. Intellectual disobedience. Intellectual disobedience prompts the ability to question authority, or in other words, challenge the status quo. Utilizing that definition, ethical programs can support educational disobedience by merely motivating students to always ask questions. Simply asking students to ask questions and question facts promotes healthy intellectual disobedience and, in turn, moral courage, for again, they are synchronous. In conclusion, the method in which educational programs can cultivate both moral courage and intellectual disobedience in individuals is by utilizing ethical education, role models, critical thinking skills, and simply encouraging students to ask questions. Sources below. I am finished.
All right. So now comes the oral defense part. Um, so these are two questions. The first one is reflection on your process, and the second one is about your the argument that you established. So, so
Hello?
what might be some evidence that you put together in your research, and maybe you include it in your IWA, your written portion, that you didn't include here in the presentation? I was muted the whole time, wasn't I? Cool.
All right.
Um, sorry, I'm used to being the only person on the mic during these things. Um, okay, so now is the individual oral defense portion of the
Okay.
presentation. There are two questions. The first one is reflection on your research process, and the second one is an extension of the argumentation in your presentation.
Okay.
So how would you say that your research question evolved as you moved through the research process?
I can definitely say that my research question evolved as I got further into the process of researching, simply because while gathering my sources, I did have to actually apply intellectual disobedience and question my sources, whether or not they were true or false, and which led to a lot of fact checking. And in turn, I also had to merely compare and compare sources to seeing which ones would be the most concise and would also be the most informative as well.
Thank you. All right, so my other question, what would you say are the implications of your findings for your community or even beyond?
I believe that the implications of my findings for my community, especially throughout this research, is simply that educational programs have the power to cultivate both moral courage and intellectual disobedience. And in fact, they should, because not only would that bolster my community and people around me, but it would also bolster the education system and allow a lot of young people, um, upcoming, uh, to essentially have that drive in them and to have those very valuable traits which further society.
All right, thank you. Um, so, all that you're going to have left now, go ahead and turn off the recording.
Yep.
So